We're going to go ahead and get started. We are at the 6 o'clock mark. I am overwhelmed by the number of participants on this call. We're very excited. Good evening and welcome. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Josh Medeiros, and I have the pleasure of serving you as the Superintendent of Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services here at the City of Bristol. I want to welcome each of you to our first ever virtual public meeting of our Parks, Rec, Youth, and Community Service Master Planning process. We had previously planned to have this public meeting in person back in March, but in light of the outbreak of COVID-19, we did make the switch to this virtual format, and we appreciate everyone accommodating the change and being adaptable with us. On behalf of our whole team, I want to express our appreciation for everyone putting aside some time this evening to participate in this exciting process. So thank you very much. Before we get started, I want to provide just a brief background on this project, explain what a master plan is, and how each of you are going to play a critical role in helping us with this process. So for starters, a master plan is essentially our roadmap to help our team of professional staff prioritize our goals and future park, program, and service improvements. The planning effort involves extensive research and inventory of all of our existing park assets and their condition, as well as a comprehensive community needs assessment process. This last part is where each of you is going to come into the equation. We want to hear from the residents of Bristol as to your current and anticipated future needs for parks, recreation, youth, and community services here in Bristol. Your participation in this project ensures that we have a community-driven master plan that will guide the work of our professional team over the next 5 to 10 years. So you may be wondering what's exactly going to be in this plan, and the answer is quite a bit. The scope of our project includes a full review of our department programs and services, an in-depth site plan and design documents specifically for Page Park, which is a site we've identified that we want to do some development on over the next few years. The plan also includes a phased approach for helping our department meet the Americans with Disabilities Act. We want to be compliant so all of our parks and facilities are accessible and equitable for all Bristol residents. The plan also calls for the development of sustainable plans and green initiatives. Additionally, the plan is going to help us develop and prioritize major projects and the associated costs to help inform what's called our 10-year capital improvement plan. Essentially, it means which projects we're going to prioritize in which years and how we can secure funding for them. So how do we achieve this massive undertaking? We sought the professional help of these professional planning firms back in January of 2020 is when we began our relationship and our partnership with Activitas and Pros Consulting. Activitas and Pros Consulting are nationally recognized firms that have worked with gold medal parks and recreation agencies spanning the entire country, everywhere from Miami-Dade County in Florida to Kansas City to Minneapolis to Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm so pleased to be partnering with them to work here in the city of Bristol, Connecticut to help us elevate our park system even further. Before I turn the presentation over to them, I want to let everyone know that we're really only at the beginning of what's going to be a 6-month planning process. After tonight, there is going to be many more opportunities for each of you and others not on the call tonight to weigh in and have your voices heard. Because this project is so massive and so important, we actually have a master plan website dedicated specifically to this project. The website houses all of our latest documents, findings, and upcoming meeting dates. You can also contact us directly with your thoughts and ideas through that website at any time. I encourage you to visit bristolparksplan2020.com. Right now, my team was going to be posting a link in the comment section here on Zoom and also on our Facebook page where we're streaming live right now. So you can check that link out and visit us at any point. At this time, I am going to introduce Austin from Pros Consulting. Austin is going to be guiding us through the meeting tonight. So again, thank you so much for engaging with us. We look forward to hearing from each of you throughout the evening and the duration of this very important project. So thank you again, and we look forward to a successful meeting tonight.
Thank you, Josh. All right. first, so my name is Austin, and we will do formal introductions here in a little bit, but I first wanted to go over some ground rules. So please submit your questions via the Q&A function. So there will be a Q&A chat pod and also a separate chat function. The Q&A, please post your questions that you have either coming into this meeting or as we go through the content for this meeting. If something spurs your mind that you want to ask a question, please provide us your input via the Q&A function. We actually have part of the project team monitoring the Q&A function, and we will try our best to respond to the questions. And don't be alarmed if you can't see other people asking questions, because once the questions are answered, then the answers actually become public. But we'll be monitoring the Q&A function and the chat pod. So please use those two mechanisms to reach out and provide us with your feedback, because this is very important, especially in this virtual environment. We want to make sure that we're recording as much information and input from you all as we can. And if connectivity is an issue, do not worry. Please continue to log back in. So I know that there's different bandwidths and different speeds of internet. And so we'll be doing different types of input during this process. So part of it will be a presentation, but then we will be doing a live polling exercise. If the connectivity may not function as well for you for the live polling, please do not worry. This is one input mechanism. And as Josh mentioned, we do have a crowdsourcing project team website. And so we will be posting this recording to the website and also providing opportunities to collect feedback that way as well. So please do not think that this is your one and only opportunity to provide us input. This is a kind of a creative way of providing input, but it's not your only way of providing input. So please bear with us as we go through this webinar. And so I just wanted to put that first and foremost. And then the agenda for the next 50 minutes or so, we'll be introducing our team. We'll be talking a little bit more about the overall master plan purpose, talking specifics about the actual process as Josh laid out just a moment ago. We'll be talking a little bit more about the deliverables and what a master plan really looks like and what we're doing. Some baseline understanding of preliminary research that we have gathered over the last couple months that we want to actually kind of discuss with you all, so you can kind of see the information that we're collecting and synthesizing as a project team. Then we'll be doing a live polling exercise that I just mentioned, and then we'll be concluding with a meeting wrap up and kind of the next steps. So that is our agenda for today. And again, we appreciate everybody being here and welcome. So with that, we will turn our attention to the introduction of our team. And Jonathan, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Austin. So my name is Jonathan Charwick. I'm an associate with Activitas. If you go to the next slide. So Activitas is a landscape architecture and civil engineering firm. We're based out of Dedham, Massachusetts. Our primary focus is athletic and recreation design. So outdoor athletics, natural grass, synthetic turf, track and fields, parks and recreation. So we have extensive experience in the New England area, actually all over the East Coast, and many projects around the country. And as part of this project, our primary role is to look at the physical parks and recreation facilities and amenities you have in the city. I'll turn over to Austin to talk a little bit about his company.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and then let Austin lead through as well. My name is Nilay Bhatt. I am the principal with Rose Consulting. We're based here in Indianapolis. Despite what the background behind me shows, we have no mountains in Indiana whatsoever. But we've been fortunate to work coast to coast, border to border, 48 states, 7 different countries. And this is actually our 25th year doing this. So Austin and I work on a lot of projects together, from Carlsbad, California to Bristol, Connecticut. And as a part of this as well, one other piece that Josh is humble enough and hasn't mentioned is he is also on the board of the National Recreation and Park Association, which is the largest member association for parks and recreation in the country. And so your director is not just a leader in Bristol itself, he's a national leader, and we're really lucky to work with the city and with such an engaged community as well. So Austin's going to be our prime and our face for the project with pros, and I'm going to let him lead through the rest of the work here.
Cool. Thank you, Nilay. Yeah, and just to also hit on that, and you can see that up on the slide, that PROS really is a full service consulting firm, and we do a lot of different types of planning projects. But what really hits home is it's all for parks and recreation agencies. So we work with municipalities of all different shapes and sizes. We work at the state level, we work at the county level, city level, town level, township level, and even communities that don't have quote unquote formal parks and recreation departments, but also they offer parks and recreation services. And so that's just a little bit more about our team. And so hopefully you can understand that the merging of Activitas and PROS Consulting provides a well-rounded and more of a holistic management approach when it comes to the actual master plan process. So with that, I'll throw it back over to Jonathan to go over a little bit about our plan purpose.
Yeah, so the purpose of the plan really is to, as Josh stated earlier, give a guide to the city for 10 years and more. So to really understand a vision for parks and recreation, youth and community services, to really understand what works with the program, what doesn't work within the program, what could be added, what could be supplemented, what could be changed, and certainly what works well. Certainly from people we have spoken to so far, there are a lot of good things that are happening with the Parks and Recreation Department, and we certainly want to build on those types of things. So the purpose of this plan really is to understand how the department works as a whole, and also to look at the physical parks and recreation facilities you have in the city. There's about 20 different sites that we've started to take a look at. Look at the physical elements, the constraints, what types of fields, courts, trails, paths you have, what type of space is available for new experiences to be added, handicap accessibility, how do you access and navigate through a park, what could be improved on that, what could be improved as far as parking is related, things like that. So, one portion of this plan is to look at the physical elements, and the other is to look at the department and how it functions with the community as a whole. So what is included in a master plan? For this, it will be the parks, the open space, the trails, facilities, programs, services, and experiences. Again, this is to understand what you have and what you're going to build upon. Not only the physical elements, but also the finances, the organizational alignment, needs prioritization, understanding, certain areas of the city that are underserved and how we can build upon those moving forward in the future. Really have an understanding of what the priorities are for the Park and Recreation Department, what really needs to be done now in the next few years, and things that are needed but not necessarily a priority over other things that are certainly lacking. And then when we get into this part of the workshop, so to date we have started speaking with a number of different stakeholders specific to athletic groups that use certain parks, the Youth Commission, the Parks Commission, certain user groups that have direct correlation to the parks. Now, this is an opportunity for us to talk to the public as a whole, to really understand, what you think works about the park system as a whole, both the physical parks along with the department, what your interactions are with the park department, what could be improved upon, and certainly what works well. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Austin and talk a little bit about the process.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right, so we wanted to actually make this more of a visualization so that way you can understand kind of the master plan process. So you'll see on the screen that there's really 3 questions that we're trying to answer when we go about developing what a Parks and Recreation master plan is. We're really trying to figure out where is it we are today, where are we going, and then ultimately, how do we put it all together and how do we prioritize things and how do we get there? So this is a kind of a simplistic model, but it's one that kind of illustrates the different technical components that are associated with developing a master plan. So consider every one of those lines underneath the questions a technical research process that we will be undertaking from the beginning of the process all the way until this fall when we actually develop the final master plan. So we're about somewhere close to the midway point of this actual process. And so we're going to be conducting site and facility reviews, doing a deep dive analysis on the programs and services, looking at levels of service, and there's that's how many acres per thousand are offered in terms of a level of service for the city of Bristol. But there's also a level of service that's related to access of different amenities as well. So there's a little bit of a different approach to take to level of service. And then putting that to mapping and looking at what are the actual physical gaps within the system. Hosting public meetings, conducting focus groups and interviews that Jonathan just mentioned about. Moving towards development of a statistically valid community survey, which we'll talk about at the end of this presentation as a next step, but then also making sure that that same survey is online for everybody to self-select and to take as an opportunity. Demographic and recreation trends review, I'm gonna go over just a little bit of that information here in the next couple slides so you can kind of understand what some of the baseline information is that we're actually looking at. But then really, how do we get there and how do we put this all together? It's really about prioritizing needs. It's about matching it with the finances that are appropriate, that actually are going to make sure that it's implementable, because at the end of the day, we don't want to provide a plan that is very, very lofty and visionary, but it's also, you know, we want implementable plans. You know, there are going to be some visionary components as part of that plan, but we want to make sure that we provide the realistic boots on the ground implementation and implementable plans for parks and recreation systems. And then you'll see something down there at the end that says CAPRA assessment. I just wanted to talk to that real fast. Is so much like Josh is on the board of the NRPA. NRPA also is produces the Council on the Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agencies. So it's basically the best of the best agencies. And there's about 170 or so around the country out of, around over 1,000 municipal park agencies across the country that are actually accredited to say that they've met 151 best practice standards. And so we are actually going to take that lens as part of this master plan and actually provide input and an assessment on how organizationally ready is the department to actually address all 151 best practices that our national association has said this is what makes a department the best of the best. And so that's another element that we are actually providing and bringing into this overall master plan process. And another way of looking at the planning process is really entrenched in the community values model. So you'll see 6 different areas up here on the screen. We're basically submitting that you can't do a master plan by removing one of these elements. And so we look at all of this in totality and say, you know what, so what if, for an example, we understood community mandates well, we understood level of service, we understood standards, we understood financial and revenue implications, and we understood the partnerships to get them there. But what if we missed the mark on governance and organization? Well, therefore, we might produce a plan with you all that, you know, meets the mark in terms of community need and meets the mark in terms of standards, but yet we omitted how the governance and the organization is actually able to implement the plan, and we lost sight of that. So we'd have a plan that wouldn't be implemented. If you flip that and say, okay, well, what if we focused on the governance, we focused on standards, we focused on level of service, partnerships, and finances, but we missed the mark on community mandates, then we just put forward a plan that the community doesn't see themselves in, and so therefore there's no alignment with actual community values. And so this, take out any one of these elements and we're submitting that a plan is not going to be fully implemented. So this is another tool in our toolbox that we like to look at in terms of the master plan to make sure that it's really a holistic approach to master planning. So going into a little bit of the baseline understanding now, over the next couple of slides, we just wanted to provide a little bit of data. We want to provide a little bit of input so that way you understand a little bit about what we're actually looking at behind the scenes before we actually start collecting a lot of information from you all through the public engagement process. So you'll see up here on the screen that you'll see different bar chart. It's bars for different years. So you see 2010 on the left side all the way up to 2034 on the right side. And so basically, we're looking at population growth. I wouldn't get hung up too much on the actual population numbers because we want to really start looking at the trend. If history is remaining true moving forward, what does the population of the city look like over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And this is important because we work in communities all across the country that some might be some of the fastest growing communities in the country. Some might be seeing a reverse effect. So it might be built out, so to speak. And so this is a good snapshot for us to understand, where is the direction of the Bristol population if history is remaining true moving forward over the next 5 and 10 years. Similarly, we do the same thing for age segment. And so if you look on the screen here, the second to left chart bar is for 2019. We broke up the age segment of your population based on the 75 and older population, 55 to 74, 35 to 54, 18 to 34, and 0 to 17. Again, why we want to look at this at the onset is we can see that as you move forward, as the population is projected to age over the next 15 years, the whole country itself is experiencing an aging trend. And so some communities do not experience that, and others experience that to a different degree. And so we can tell that you are going to be experiencing an aging population as history is showing moving forward. But it is also important to recognize that 19% of the population is still under 18, 21% of the population is under the age of 34. And so by doing this as an age segment, you can kind of get a good pulse for what are the different experiences that we are currently offering as a Parks and Recreation system, and does that align with what our demographic is, and what does that look like moving forward? Because if we overly plan for particular age segment, are we going to miss the mark on the rest of our population as well? And so this is a very important concept for us to bring forward and understand here at the beginning. And we did the same thing when we start looking at race. And so the same type of orientation here in terms of the chart. 2019 is in the second bar to the left. The big takeaway on this is the 83% white population projected for 2019, but as you move forward, that decreases. So you see diversification. And with diversification, we still want to make sure that we're understanding community values and community needs and community priorities, because we want to make sure that we're touching all areas of the community throughout the planning process, especially as we plan for Parks and Recreation public services the next 5, 10, 15 years. We also look at trends. So we look at national trends, regional trends, and local trends. And so what is happening on the national level in terms of recreation, and does that actually apply at the regional level, and does that apply at the local level? And so this is an example of the New England region by the Sports and Fitness Industry Association that's basically said, of all the agencies, public parks and recreation agencies in the New England area, the top 5 most offered core program areas are team special events, team sports, social recreation events, individual sports, and health and wellness programs. So this is good information for us to look at, because then we can say, what are those trends within these core program areas across the country? And then more closely, how does this actually relate to Bristol, Connecticut? Are these actually being implemented here? Should they be? Are they seeing the same effect here or not seeing the same effect here? Because a lot of our job is to actually look at what is happening from a trend standpoint, and is that actually occurring at the local level? Because a one-size-fit-all approach is not appropriate for every park and recreation agency across the country, because there's different community values, there's different community interests, and so this is a mechanism that we want to utilize to kind of look at that. And to correspond to that, we're going to show you what's called a market potential index, or an MPI. And basically the way of looking at this is, this provides us as a planning team some background information about what the proclivity or affinity of your population is to consume particular parks and recreation services. It's not to say that these are services that are being currently provided by the department, but it's just saying that based on market research, this is what your population would be more likely to spend money on and spend energy on than not. And so the way to interpret this is, the red line is 100, which is the national average. And so in this particular instance, this is the fitness chart. Yoga is 109 for Bristol residents. So in other words, based on market research and market data, 9% more likely than the national average to consume or participate in a yoga behavior based on the market demographics. Now, again, this is where we now need to actually look at programs, services, and do that program assessment that we mentioned a couple slides ago as part of our master plan, to say, how does this actually align with what is actually happening in terms of attendance, in terms of interest from the population. So don't be alarmed if you participate in Zumba and you see Zumba is at 87, meaning you're 13% less likely than the national average to participate. This is where information needs to be corroborated based on the local level. But we want to bring forward this idea so you know that we're looking at this from many different angles in terms of data and research. We also produce this information for sports. So you see everything from baseball, football, golf, soccer, softball, basketball, volleyball, and tennis. So it starts giving us a little bit of an understanding of what is the market kind of bearing right now in terms of these activities. And lastly, we do this by outdoor activity. And one of the things that's always encouraging to see is how does outdoor activity manifest itself within a park system? And so you can see for all the different examples that are shown here on the screen, there are high proclivities or higher than the national average market consumption for these type of activities, which is highly encouraging. Everything from backpacking, canoeing, mountain biking, road biking, horseback riding, etc. So these are lenses in which we can kind of look at our preliminary work with you all, leading into the actual data collection and analysis that we look at the local level. So we just wanted to bring that forward so that way you all understand a little bit about the baseline understandings that we're bringing into this process as we go along. So now, a little bit more interactive component of this entire process is live polling. So if we were there in person with you all, which we were planning on doing a couple months ago before kind of the travel restrictions and everything kind of came into play, we were going to utilize clickers to actually do some polling exercises. And so we would be remiss if we didn't have that opportunity during this time as well. And so we are going to pop open about 10 live poll questions, and we group them. We group them into parks and facilities, recreation programming, marketing, participation barriers, service priorities, and ultimately satisfaction. There'll be multiple choice questions, and we will review the answers anonymously after each one of the polls and kind of do a little bit of a debrief. And so while you're filling out the poll, we'll actually be seeing the responses come in, and then we will end the poll because it gives me kind of an update on how many people are participating in the poll based on the attendee numbers here for this webinar. And then we will share those results so everybody can see them in live time, and we'll kind of do a little mini facilitation based on those results when they start coming in. So I'm going to launch the first poll, and it should be popping up on your screen now. And you can actually move the poll on your end. If it's a little bit more difficult for you to see, you can kind of move it across your screen. That is fine. It's not going to affect it on our end. But this is about parks and facilities. And so you should be able to view 3 questions right now. And the polling is live. So if you read ahead of me, feel free. You can click on it, but I will go through it. And so there's 3 questions. The first one is, how often do you use any City of Bristol park or facility? This is a one choice question. So it's just at least weekly, at least monthly, at least 6 times per year, 2 to 5 times per year, once per year or less, or I do not use City of Bristol parks and facilities. So we want to try to quantify this a little bit. So start thinking through in your head a little bit about how often do you kind of average use a City of Bristol park or facility. And once you have that answer, you can scroll down on your poll pod there, and you'll see that the question number 2 is, what parks or facilities do you use the most often? So this is a select all that apply scenario, so you can kind of select multiple answers. And so the choices, and mind you, as we go through this polling process, we are limited in responses, so we couldn't put everything in the kitchen sink up here on answer choice. So be mindful of that as you probably write in comments or chat to us, that we did have to kind of limit the actual number of choices. That's also why we have the Q&A, and we also have the chat function as part of this. So do you use pools and splash parks, ball fields, basketball/tennis courts, bike trails and walking paths, dog parks, disc golf courses, open space, general open space, playgrounds, pavilions, or other? And then question number 3, back to a single answer, is how would you rate the overall quality of City of Bristol parks and facilities? And we just have that on a simple scale from excellent, good, fair, poor, or NA, because you don't use them, that's fine. We'll leave it open here just for a little bit longer, so I can give a few more attendees. All right, we'll go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Share results. All right, so you should be able to see the results now. And so how often do you use any City of Bristol park or facility? So we have a lot of what we'll call core users as part of the meeting today. So about half of us, at least weekly, are out there in the park and facilities. Good number, at least once a month. Good number, at least 6 times per year. A couple people, not so much. And then a couple people do not use. Perfect. All right. So what parks and facilities do you use most often? Let's see here. Let's see, bike trails and walking paths are the #1 response, followed by, looks like open space. Yeah, open space. You know, that's one thing that we did notice as we were there for the first time, is just the amount of open space and natural areas you have within your parks. It makes a really beautiful backdrop for a lot of your settings. So it's encouraging to see that. Playgrounds, heavily used, tied with ball fields. Okay, and some of the lesser used in terms of the representation on this call is pavilions and disc golf course. Okay, a lot of other, and so I'm assuming there would be a lot of other because of the, again, limiting. For those of you that did select other, and if you do have the chat function available, if you wouldn't mind, please respond to the panelists with what some of those other facilities are that you utilize, because we want to make sure that we're capturing that information. So if you wouldn't mind, please put that in the chat pod so we can capture that. Then how would you rate the overall quality of the City of Bristol parks and facilities? The most saying good, fair number saying excellent, fair, and then of course a couple do not use. No poor, that's awesome, that's good. It's good to see. Okay, perfect. All right, so now I will do another poll. Launch. Results. There we go. Poll number 2. Thank you for bearing with me. All right. So programs and services. So this is the same type of questions as you just responded to. So it's 3 questions. They're the same format. So the first one is going to be about use. The second one is going to be about what you participate in. And the third one is going to be about the quality. So the first one, how often do you participate in any City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, and Youth Community Services program? We have at least weekly. We have at least monthly, at least 6 times per year, 2 to 5 times per year, once per year or less. Never, do not use any City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, Youth Community Service program, which that's okay. And then the second one, again, sticking with the theme of providing kind of a list, but the almighty other down there as well. We have special events, community instructional programs, day camps, preschool programs, youth programs, teen programs, adult programs, aquatics, and other selection answer. So please respond with more than one if you participated in more than one. And then ending with, how would you rate the overall quality of the City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, Youth Community Service programs that you participated in? How would you rate the quality of them? As excellent, good, fair, poor, or NA, you do not use them. And while you're at it, if you still wouldn't mind, for those of you that actually did insert or select other for the type of programs you participate in, please, if you wouldn't mind, put those in the chat pod so that way we can capture that information too. So I really appreciate it. Let's see, the attendee list is getting high. We'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Share results. All right, you should be able to see the results now. So a little bit less usage in terms of the programs and services than what we had on the facilities side of the equation, but we still have a couple of core users here that we say at least weekly, at least monthly, some at least a couple times a year, and then once per year, and then so this is a good mixture of people here in terms of the programs and services being offered. Hands down, the number one program and service participated in is special events, with almost 3/4 of you all responded with special events, followed by, looks like, community instructional programs, some more of the leader-directed youth programs, okay? And then some of the lesser used, at least in terms of this group, some preschool programs, teen programs, okay? And then in terms of quality, good. Again, no poor. So a couple fair, mostly good and excellent, and a couple do not use. Perfect. Okay. All right. So you're getting the hang of this. You're hanging in there. You're doing great. So now we're going to switch it and go to marketing. This is a one question poll. So there's not 3. So you don't have to scroll that much. But this is kind of we want to know your preference. So there's a bunch of different marketing avenues that we can utilize to reach out to you, and they're listed here. And this is a select all that apply question. So what are your preferred ways to learn about City of Bristol, Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services programs and events? Program brochure, word of mouth, email, newspaper, public meetings, even virtual public meetings or in-person public meetings, department website, social media, so that could be your Facebook, Instagrams, Twitters of the world, push notifications via an app. Some park systems are actually developing their own departmental phone apps or even facility specific apps. So that way it gets push notifications to users. Flyers, posters, kiosks in actual facilities and parks. And then at the very bottom there, you'll see the word other. And so this is another one that if there is a preference for how to learn about the department's offerings and services that are not listed on this list, please select other and let us know in the chat pod what those are, because marketing is something that is very, very important to the public agencies, because we want to make sure that we're meeting people where they are. And so if there's a technique that is preferable to the community that's not listed, we definitely want to know what that is. Okay, a few more responses. Okay, we'll go about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. We'll share. Okay, social media. Social media being the number one response for the folks on this particular meeting. Email, followed up closely to email. And then where do we go from there? We go to department website. So website is very important. Program brochure, followed closely, close to the website there. Push notifications via an app. So I'm seeing a lot of the technology trend here a little bit in terms of this particular marketing. And then again, we had one response for others, so if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat pod, that would be absolutely great. Okay. Let's see. All right, so service prioritization. So this again is one question, but it's we're requesting you only select 2. So before I read the instructions, please limit your response to 2 if you would. We want to make you prioritize a little bit. So of this list, what parks and recreation services should receive the most attention from the City of Bristol over the next 2 years? So again, please only select 2 because we want to make you prioritize. Park maintenance, the number of parks, number of trails or connectivity, quality of amenities, new amenities or facilities, so adding things to the system, more recreation programming, so adding programs and services, quality of programs, so really concentrating on that quality assurance, more community events, ADA accessibility, so again, the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility, or customer service. So customer service can be everything from talking to staff, it's how the presence of the department out in the parks. Customer service is a large concept here too. So please only pick two. What do you think should receive the most attention from the City of Bristol over the next 2 years? This one's a little bit of a decision process. So I'm gonna leave this open for a little bit here. Responses still coming in. All right. Getting close to the number. We'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. Let's share results. All right. Tie. Well, there we go. Quality of amenities and park maintenance. Yeah. So really looking at the investment in the existing system about our park maintenance, and then also the quality of those amenities, but followed closely by new amenities and facilities. And that's going to be a big planning process for us. And this is why your input is so valuable, because it's really balancing what is the balance between investing in what we have, but then providing something that's new and different and meeting community needs that way. So it's encouraging to see that's kind of response here in this particular meeting, because again, that's reinforcing to us how is it that we strike that balance between investing in the existing system, but then also looking towards what is the future system look like over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So very encouraging to see that. Trails and connectivity, community events, accessibility. Perfect. Thank you. All right, 2 more. All right, so this is a barriers question, and this is a select all that apply. So I'm not asking you to limit yourself here. So we want to know what prevents you from using City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services facilities or programs more often. So it could be anything from I do not know what's being offered, you're too busy, lack of quality programs or facilities, maybe the program or the facility is just not offered. So, you'd want to participate, but what you're interested in is just not offered. Program or facility times are not convenient. It might be too far from your residence, and there's a willingness to travel component in terms of your participation. Maybe the fees are too high, or that's a barrier to you and your household. Lack of accessibility. Security is insufficient, or other. So again, we have there in the bottom, other. And for those sensing the theme here, if you do select other, please, if you wouldn't mind, please comment those in the chat pod so we can capture what are some of those other barriers that are precluding you from you and your household participating more in these programs and services. Additionally, if you wouldn't mind, for those that selected program or facility not offered, if you wouldn't mind providing us that kind of detail as well in the chat feature, that would be great, because I'm just looking at the results coming in, so I'm just seeing how people are selecting. We'll go another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So busyness, yep. So we know that the day and age that we live in, and so people's schedules are changing, and actually how people are kind of consuming recreational behaviors are changing. So there's a lot more drop-in programs. What are the length of programs and directed services that we're offering more as a park and recreation agency now. So that's duly noted. Followed by do not know what's being offered. So again, going to the marketing, that's why we wanted to ask the marketing question. And we're asking about barriers now. Program facility times not convenient. Program facility not offered. Again, please provide us with some of that input. And again, with the any other ones, that'd be great to know as well. All right, last one. This one hopefully should go fast. So thinking about everything that you just thought about over the last several questions and polls, we want to know, please rate your satisfaction with the overall value that you receive from the City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services. So we've thought about the types of facilities, we've thought about programs and services, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about some barriers, and we talked about service priorities. So putting that all, into your thought process, please rate how you would rate your satisfaction with the overall value that you receive from the City of Bristol Parks, Recreation, Youth, and Community Services Department. And it's very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neutral, somewhat dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, or you don't know. That's fine too. No opinion or don't know. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay. The majority very satisfied, or at least somewhat satisfied. A couple neutral, one dissatisfied, and a couple don't know. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, stop sharing. Close that. All right. So you've hung in there, and we've reached to this portion of the actual meeting process. And so we want to make sure, oh, Jonathan, you raised your hand, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to touch base. There were a few questions that came in very specific to sports and the potential for those being added to some of the facilities. So touch base a little bit further on the site analysis. So as part of our review of each of your parks, the majority of the parks we're taking a look at for overall condition, accessibility, and the goal will be to tell the city, per park, let's say Seymour Park, there's no accessible parking. We need to provide that, or the condition of the courts there are to the point that they need to be, completely replaced. So for the majority of the parks in the city, we'll be taking a look at those types of conditions, giving order of magnitude costs for those repairs that then can be put into a 10-year plan to prioritize, what renovations need to occur on what parks and when those should occur. As part of that as well, we'll be looking at the general space allowed on those parks to understand if there's opportunities to add more facilities. I know through this meeting, there's been a few questions about pickleball and softball in the city. So those are certainly things we'll look at when we look at these different parks and understand if there's opportunities to add some of those amenities or facilities to some of your parks. In addition to that, Page Park, we're looking very specifically at the park and looking at proposed design. So, understanding there's a little more open space in certain areas on that park. So we'll be doing a true master plan design for that park in lieu of, looking at the existing conditions of the rest of the parks in the city, understanding what kind of repairs and replacements are needed over a period of time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. And so actually, that's a good segue, because you can see the first bullet here on the screen is, are there any additional questions? First and foremost, please use the Q&A pod if you would like. And I'm going to check in with Nilay and the rest of the panelists right now to see, is there anything that we need to address right now that was kind of a recurring question that we have been receiving over the course of the last 50 minutes?
Austin, nothing specific that hasn't been answered in writing already, but there were a couple of comments and questions that they had about current situation that staff may be best situated to answer. So once you wrap up the meeting, we can turn it over to Josh and he can speak to that.
Perfect. Thank you, Nilay. All right. So what's going to happen is we're going to compile and post a document on the project's website. And again, if you've been looking along every one of the slides in the bottom corner here, you see bristolparksplan2020.com. We will be posting kind of this recording, because this has been a recorded presentation. We'll be posting this to the website, but then also developing kind of a Q&A document based on the things that we've heard in this meeting. So that way we can publish that. So for those that couldn't attend this meeting, for example, some registered today, but then something came up, and so they sent me an email saying that they couldn't attend. And so we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to see what was being discussed and what was being asked. The immediate next steps is the statistically valid community survey development. So as Jonathan mentioned at the beginning of this process, We've already started doing interviews and focus groups, and this is a public meeting, public forum, collecting information. We'll be moving towards developing a statistically valid survey that will be mailed out to the select random population of Bristol. That's going to be a representative sample for the entire population. And that'll be done by a sub-consultant, ETC Institute out of Olathe, Kansas. And then if you are not selected randomly for that survey, do not be worried that you're not going to provide any other input. We'll be taking that same survey and putting it online on the crowdsourcing website developed through SurveyMonkey, and we'll be allowing everybody to self-select into taking that survey. That'll be happening after we develop and launch the statistically valid survey. So everybody will have an opportunity to provide a lot more detailed feedback in an online survey format. And then of course, additional public meeting opportunities throughout. We're moving towards a report development timeline of November 2020. So we have much more information to look at. And if you remember back into that 3-question slide at the beginning of this presentation, we have a lot more data work and actual research to actually do over the next several months. And so we want you to stay engaged by going to the website, and there's a comment feature on the website that you can submit a question or a comment, and it comes directly to the planning team, so that way we can respond to it. And then also be on the lookout for the upcoming online survey that will be posted on the actual website. So with that, this actually kind of concludes our formalized time here with the meeting. But to Nilay's point that he mentioned just a little bit ago, the project team will be staying on here for a few more minutes. And so we can take more Q&A via the pod or the chat pod. And so with that, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for being flexible and allowing us to do this meeting in this format. And please stay tuned and please stay engaged throughout this entire planning process, because we really need your opinions and your voices, because ultimately we need a plan that aligns with your vision and your value system. So again, thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Austin, and thank you everyone for participating in this master planning process. I think it was a really beneficial engagement. I'm so overwhelmed that we had so many attendees on this call, and the comments and feedback were great. Again, as Austin said, please go to our master planning website if you want to continue that conversation. I do want to address, there were a couple comments or questions regarding the state of the parks and our state of our programs in light of everything going on with COVID-19. So I did want to just take a minute to speak to that briefly. So it is kind of a weird time to be talking about planning in the future when, right now there's so much uncertainty, but I feel like now more than ever, this is such a great time to be doing this because parks are essential, the programs are essential services, and we're really excited to hopefully be back to some level of normalcy soon. But since this outbreak happened, our department has continued to work. We've been offering virtual programs, virtual recreation, virtual counseling in our Youth and Community Services division to keep youth and the community engaged during this time. Generally, our parks have remained open, but we did close some of our active elements. A full list of what's open and what's closed right now is available on our website, bristolrec.com. It's right on the homepage, and we do update that regularly, so you can take a look at that. As far as our programs and the reopening of our active park elements, we are following federal, state, and local guidelines in terms of our ability to reopen these spaces. The governor's office recently did announce that summer camps are going to be considered an essential service in order to get people back to work. So as they begin to phase the opening of the state, our staff are positioning ourselves to be able to offer summer camp or some version of that this summer. Where there is clearance to offer programs after June 29th. So our staff has been working on plans to accommodate all of the guidelines that have come out through the OEC office. So the camp will be offered. It's going to look different this summer. We know that. Some of the guidelines that have come out have included reduced group sizes, possibly temperature checks before staff and kids report into the camp. There's a lot of PPE requirements, cleaning protocols, and things of that nature. So our office is busy working on protocols and planning. We're in regular communication with the Board of Education, determining locations of our camp and how we can accommodate the most kids this summer and ensuring that the camps are as safe as possible. So camp is become our priority for the summer. We are following everything day to day. As everyone knows that I'm sure following the news, things are changing week to week in terms of COVID-19. All of our park maintenance staff remains working, the fields, everything's ready to go. But unfortunately, we have to follow the governor's mandates pertaining to no more than 5 people in a space at a time and things like that, which are preventing us from being able to issue permits and other things to resume sport activities. That said, as soon as we do get the clearance from the state, we're prepared to reopen. We want people out on the fields at that time when it's safe to do so. That's really it for the updates. We do post regularly on our Facebook page. As I mentioned, bristolrec.com is a good resource where we keep everything updated. I will remain on the call if more questions pertaining to this or anything else come up, and I'm gonna try to address those as they come up. I see a question from Jody in terms of our special needs programming for the summer. At this point, we don't know for sure whether that's going to be able to happen or not. Like I said, the only clearance we've really gotten from the state are on the summer camp as an essential service. They're not really giving too much direction at this point as to resuming some of the more regular programs that we offer. So unfortunately, we are taking it week by week. We want to offer as much as we can this summer, but it really will depend on what the state essentially tells us that we're able to do. We're also very keyed into the National Recreation Parks Association. They've been actively releasing information on what communities across the country are doing. So we've been checking that daily to get updates as to what's open, what's closed in not only our state, but across the country. So we're being very proactive and we're trying to get everyone back as soon as we can, because I know everyone's ready to be out, back on the fields, back at the pools. But again, we can't do anything until it's safe to do so. I'll also put out too, for anyone, I'm gonna put my email address in the comments. So when we do end this session, if you do think of something or have any questions, you can email me at any point. That is now in the comment box, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any concerns in any of that. So. Well.
Then Josh, one more question.
Yeah, Chris, I see a question from Kristen. How many children do you feel you'll be able to accommodate for each group of the summer camp? So the guidelines right now coming out of the state, Kristen, are we can have no more than 10 kids per group and no more than 30 kids at a site. We are expecting the state to release more information on Friday, May 15th, as to if those guidelines are going to be modified at all. The state has also put in that we can apply for a waiver in order to expand the amount of kids at the site. So for example, we are looking at some of our high schools to be a potential site for the summer camps. Those schools are very large and we feel that we can most likely accommodate a good amount of kids in a safe way in different wings of the school. But we are expecting much smaller group sizes and a lot more cleaning and PPE, et cetera. Good question. And again, as we get closer to camp, we're going to release some protocol procedures, a lot of these questions that I'm sure many families have right now. Those will be coming out so families can make an informed decision as to their comfort level of sending their child to camp. We are tentatively looking at May 27th as the registration date. So we're planning on releasing these protocols most likely next week. So again, parents can have that time to assess. Marie is asking, will you be able to expand more for season uses and programs? Will you be able to expand more for seasonal uses and programs? Marie, can you just clarify what you're asking there? I don't know if you're looking for if the seasons are going to be expanded. If that's what you're asking, we are prepared to have, if we get the green light, in late July to be able to offer programs, we're going to do that. If we get clearance to let people out on the fields again, and Little League and other groups want to have a delayed season, we're going to accommodate that. Will you be able to expand more winter programs? Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for new ideas for winter to keep people busy. Commissioner Bogdansky has a great question. I've also had a city resident inquire about permanently closing the Memorial Boulevard to have it be a space for walking and biking. That's something we've talked about internally. As everyone probably knows by now, the boulevard is currently shut down to traffic because with the state being closed in this capacity, we've wanted to expand the open space for passive recreation. So a lot of people have really taken advantage of that. They've been practicing social distancing and have been out riding bikes, walking around, fishing, looking at the monuments. So it's been great. I've talked again internally about I'd love to close the boulevard down and let this be an active park. But I do think that's probably going to be a longer conversation. Just big issues that come out of having that space permanently closed. It's working right now because most people are working from home, but the concern would be if we close it down long-term, what does that do for the traffic? So we would definitely have to engage the Bristol Police Commission and other decision makers on that one. But I think it's a great question. Scott Lodge is asking, when you say accommodate delayed programs, does that mean current permits would be extended? Yes, Scott, we'd look to, we're going to do our best to accommodate whatever schedule each organization is looking to do. Hopefully if we get the clearance to do sports, it can continue into the fall as appropriate. Again, we just don't know, which is frustrating at this point because I know everyone's eager to plan. Our staff is eager to have a game plan, but with things changing day to day, again, we're following direction from the state, so we just don't have a day for sure. But we're definitely looking to expand any delayed requests to extend the seasons as we can. Anyone that is associated with a sports group can request field space right now through bristolrec.com. Again, we're not permitted to issue the permits, but we can definitely kind of earmark your space for when that happens. Another great question from Marie. Will the master plan address adjacent park assets like neighborhoods, businesses, etc.? I don't know, Austin, do you want to jump in on that one? If you're still there.
I'm still here. I had to click the button. So will the master plan address adjacent park assets like neighborhood businesses, etc.? Yeah. So part of the process that we'll be doing is a level of service analysis. I didn't go into much detail about that at the beginning of this presentation, but what we do when we develop the actual city community inventory is we will take the public assets from the department, but we'll also look at public recreation facilities and experiences offered by schools, HOAs, other green spaces. Some communities have state parks next to them, national parks next to them, conservation areas next to them, etc. So when we actually get to that level of service development process in a couple months as part of the master plan, we will actually start looking at all the other service providers with offering parks and recreation programs, but then also facilities, amenities, and spaces. So yes, we will actually look at that because not everything needs to be the responsibility of the park system to provide parks and recreation spaces. We need to understand the actual collective contribution that everybody puts together for parks and recreation services within Bristol. So yes, good question.
I'll also add on to that, Austin. This team, for everyone's benefit, the master planning team has been meeting with stakeholders for the last month or two now, which has included a number of our sports organizations. They have talked to the Chamber of Commerce. They have talked to all types of stakeholders, the economic development department. We've talked to Public Works. So we're really making the rounds to talk to as many organizations within the community that are impacted by parks, recreation, youth, and community services, to get as much data and as much feedback as we can. And we're going to continue to have those conversations over the next 6 months. There's another good question from a participant asking about a waiver accommodation for individuals with special needs who require one-on-one supervision during activities, which may not be consistent with strict requirements on social distancing. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have the answer for it at this point. Again, we've been notified that the state's planning on providing an update regarding summer camp and daycare and things of that nature on Friday. So I'm thinking that there'll be information on this. Again, we want to accommodate everyone that's interested in coming to camp, and we always staff a great number of paraprofessionals every summer who do a fantastic job working with everyone. So we're hoping we can do that again this summer. Yeah. There's another question from Orlando. Is it possible to place signs throughout the parks that describe wildlife, flora, fauna, and trees visible? I think that's a great suggestion. I think the answer is yes. We can definitely look at that. Okay. Is there any other questions as people think? Again, we're over the time, but I'm happy to stay here for a couple more minutes to answer any outstanding questions. But again, our office is going to be releasing more info in terms of the summer shortly. Also, for anyone that is interested in the summer camp, we did on our Facebook page and through our email blast, we did send out a survey, I believe yesterday or the day before, asking some questions about the summer camp in terms of comfort levels, what hours of care people would be looking for this summer. We're trying to get as much feedback as we can to design that program to meet the needs of everyone in the city. So if you haven't taken that survey and want to do that, we would appreciate it. We can probably post the link in this group as well for anyone that needs to take that. If there's no final questions on the master plan, again, I really appreciate everyone participating. I thought this was really beneficial. A lot of great ideas came out of this, and I think we're only at the beginning, so we're looking forward to all the feedback coming through. Okay. So again, if anyone has anything, I'm going to continue to look through these questions, but you can access me through email that I commented before, joshmedeiros@bristolct.gov. And if you have specific questions for the master plan, you can comment those through the website, which is Bristol Parks Plan 2020. So again, thank you. I don't know, Austin, is there anything, any other wrap up?
No. Again, thank you everybody for your time and your attention, and please stay engaged. And I can't stress this enough, view the project website and let us know your comments, let us know your questions, and we want to get your feedback because this is your plan. We're here to help guide that, but this is your plan, and so we're going to make the plan for you. So thank you all, and really appreciate it, and have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.